My name is Ray Harland, and I'm 58 years old. I've spent most of my life working with my hands, building houses, repairing things, and trying to hold my family together through sheer effort and stubbornness. I never imagined that one day, my greatest struggle wouldn't be a job site or my aching back, but the betrayal sitting across from me at my own dinner table, my own son. It started with something small, a movement so quick that if I hadn't been watching, I might have missed it completely. That evening, while I was outside at the grill, I caught Terry near my navy blue work backpack. He bent over it in the living room, his back blocking most of what he was doing. His hands moved fast, practiced, like he'd rehearsed. I saw him unzip the main compartment, pull something from his pocket, and slide it inside between my gloves and measuring tape. He zipped the bag shut just as casually, brushing his palms against his jeans like he was wiping away fingerprints. He didn't know I was watching. I stood frozen on the patio, grilling fork clenched in my hand, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. At first, I wanted to believe it was innocent, maybe a surprise gift, maybe something he wanted me to find later, but there was something in the way he moved, furtive, secretive, that told me this wasn't about generosity, it was about hiding. When he came outside a few minutes later, his face was all smiles, too bright, too forced. He leaned against the deck railing, asking if the steaks were ready like everything was normal. I answered just as casually, pretending nothing was wrong. Inside, though, my gut twisted. I knew my son well enough to recognize the signs. Nervous energy disguised as cheer, the quick glances, the tension in his jaw. He was hiding something from me, and whatever it wasn't good. I waited for my moment. When Terry excused himself to go upstay, I slipped inside, heart pounding. Every sound in the house seemed louder, the creak of the floorboards, the whisper of the zipper as I opened the bag. I dug through my tools and notebooks until my fingers brushed against something that didn't belong. Wrapped in dark tissue paper, tucked carefully as if it were precious, was a diamond ring. Not just any ring either. The stone was huge, the kind of thing you would only see in a jewelry store display case. Even in the dim lamplight, it sparkled with a brilliance that nearly blinded me. And it wasn't fake. I could feel its weight, the cold bite of real metal and stone. My stomach dropped. What was my son doing with a ring like this? Why hide it in my bag of all places? I sat back in the chair, the ring burning hot in my palm, and one truth hit me harder than any hammer I'd ever swung. This wasn't an accident. Terry wasn't giving me a gift. He was setting me up. The night before I discovered that ring, dinner had already told me everything I needed to know about how far gone my son was. We sat around the oak table, the one that had held 30 years of family meals. It should have been a place of comfort. Instead, it had become a battleground. Terry slammed his fist down so hard that the salt shaker toppled over, scattering crystals across the table like broken glass. "Dad, we need another 2,000 this month," he demanded. The words hit me harder than his fist. I froze mid-bite, fork hovering, meatloaf still clinging to the tines. His wife Zella sat across from me, twisting her wedding ring nervously around her finger. Her makeup was smudged, evidence that she'd already been crying before the argument even began. Enough. That word slipped from me before I could stop it, sharper than intended. "You're 28 years old, Terry. It's time you learned how to provide for your wife yourself." His face flushed with anger, or maybe desperation. It was hard to tell with him anymore. He shot back, voice cracking. "You're being selfish. Mom would have understood us. She would have helped." That name, Martha, struck like a knife. My late wife, his mother. She had always seen the best in people, especially in him. But she'd also believed in consequences. The mention of her felt like a weapon, used to shame me into giving in once again. Zella pressed a napkin to her face, muffling her sobs. I looked at her, then back at my son. I again no plan in him, no sense of accountability, only need. Endless, bottomless need. I pushed my chair back. The sound of wood scraping against the linoleum floor made Zella flinch. "I've given you $1,200 this month alone," I said slowly. "Before that, it was the wedding venue, the apartment deposit you never used, Zella's medical bills. The list doesn't end, Terry." "Dad, please," he said, softer this time, almost begging. "No." I stood, my voice heavy with finality. "I won't enable this anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating. My son's breathing came ragged, his fists tight at his sides. Zella kept her eyes on her plate, as if the pattern on the china might give her answers. I turned my back and walked upstairs, each step heavier than the last, carrying me further from the wreckage of another failed dinner. In my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at Martha's photograph. Her smile in that blue anniversary dress reminded me of the life we used to have, the life I'd tried to protect. The Harley I sold to cover Terry's wedding deposit, the Alaska fishing trip I canceled to pay for an apartment they never moved into, the overtime hours I worked at 57 to cover Zella's medical emergencies. $47,000, that's what my son's emergencies had cost me since Martha's funeral. I had tried to tell myself it was for family, for love, but the truth was plain now. I hadn't been helping him. I'd been feeding a cycle. And as I sat there, tracing Martha's face in the photo, her last words came back to me like an accusation. Teach him to fly on his own, Ray. Don't let him live in our shadow forever. But I hadn't taught him. I had enabled him. And now, it seemed, he had grown into a man who expected my sacrifices as his birthright. That night, lying awake, listening to Terry and Zella whispering downstairs, my gut told me something had shifted. The tension in his voice wasn't just about money anymore. There was something else. A plan. A scheme I couldn't yet see. I didn't know it then, but the next evening, when I caught him slipping something into my backpack, that gut feeling would be confirmed in the most devastating way. The morning after that explosive dinner, I woke before the sun. Sleep hadn't come easily, not with Martha's words echoing in my mind, and the memory of Terry's clenched fists burned into my thoughts. I brewed a pot of coffee at 5:30. The kitchen was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you aware of every little sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the drip of the faucet, the faint creak of the house settling. I sat at the table with a mug in my hands, staring into the dark liquid as though it might give me answers. $47,000 gone. Years of savings, of hard work, of missed opportunities. I had traded my Harley, my dream trip, my comfort in retirement, all for a son who never said thank you, never tried to stand on his own. And yet, despite all of it, I felt guilty. That's the curse of being a parent. No matter how much they take, no matter how much they hurt you, part of you always wonders if you could have done more. If maybe the failures are yours, not theirs. But as the light crept across the kitchen counter, I saw things more clearly. Terry wasn't just struggling. He was manipulating. He had learned over the years that if he pushed hard enough, if he cried loud enough, if he invoked Martha's name at just the right moment, I would cave, every time. He knew how to get what he wanted, and I had been too blind, or maybe too hopeful, to admit it. I carried my coffee upstairs and opened my nightstand drawer. Inside was a stack of loan documents, my signature scrawled across each one. Personal loans, emergency withdrawals, credit applications, all tied back to Terry. Each piece of paper felt like a receipt for my weakness. I shuffled through them slowly, reading dates, amounts, terms. The numbers piled up in my head, a mountain I could never climb out of. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about survival. If I kept bailing him out, I'd be working until the day I died. I looked up at Martha's photograph. She was smiling in her blue anniversary dress, frozen in a time when our family still made sense. I whispered to her, though I wasn't sure if I wanted forgiveness or strength. "You would have seen through this," I said. "You always did." For the first time in years, I admitted something to myself. I didn't trust my son, not with my money, not with my future, not even with my name. That realization hit me harder than anything else, because once trust is gone, what's left? The rest of the day passed in a fog. I went through the motions, washing dishes, tinkering in the garage, pretending life was normal. But beneath it all, a question gnawed at me. How far would Terry go? It wasn't just about money anymore. I could feel it. The desperation in his voice at dinner, the whispers with Zella, the way his eyes darted away when I told him no. He wasn't just begging anymore. He was planning. And deep down, I knew something danger. Ours was coming. I couldn't prove it yet. I couldn't put it into words. But my gut had never failed me before. Not on a construction site, not in raising a family, and not now. Terry was about to cross a line I couldn't pull him back from. And when he did, everything we had left as father and son would shatter for good. The very next afternoon, Terry came bounding into the living room with a grin stretched too wide across his face. His energy was electric, almost manic, the kind of excitement that didn't quite feel real. "Dad, I'm sorry about yesterday," he blurted out before I could even set down my lunch cooler. "But I've got great news. TechForge Solutions hired me, senior IT consultant position, $65,000 a year plus benefits." For a moment, I just stood there staring at him, the words tumbling around in my head like loose nails in a box. After weeks of tears, demands, and shouting, suddenly my son was a picture of success? It didn't add up. Zella clapped her hands together dramatically from her seat in the armchair, her smile painted on too perfectly. "Isn't that wonderful? He got the call this afternoon." Her voice had that staged brightness I'd heard before, when she'd claimed the apartment deposit was lost, when she'd insisted the medical bills were emergencies. Always polished, always rehearsed. Terry hugged me hard, holding on longer than usual, as if he wanted to squeeze out my doubts before they could form. "Monday," he said quickly. "They want me to start immediately." It sounded almost too prepared, like he'd practiced the lines. Still, a part of me wanted to believe. After years of sacrifice, maybe this was the turnaround. Maybe tough love at the dinner table had finally shaken him awake. "Really?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. "That's wonderful, son. I knew you had it in you." For a brief moment, pride swelled in me, my shul. Dares even loosened, as if the weight of months, years, was lifting. Martha's words came back to me. Teach him to fly on his own. Maybe, finally, he was spreading his wings. But then I saw the cracks. Terry kept smoothing down his shirt, even though it was freshly ironed. His eyes darted to Zella every time I asked a question, as if searching for cues. His answers about the job, salary, benefits, retirement plan, were polished, too polished, almost like a script. And the timing was too perfect. The day after I refused to give him money, after years of depending on me, suddenly he had a job with a high salary, ready to start immediately. It was the kind of story I wanted to believe, but something in my gut told me it wasn't real. Still, I played along. "This calls for a barbecue," I announced, trying to sound cheerful. "We'll celebrate, just like old times." Terry's eyes lit up, and Zella clapped again, softer now, but still a little too performative. "I'll make my potato salad," she chimed in. I went out back to fire up the grill. The smell of lighter fluid, the crackle of charcoal, things I could trust, things that never lied. As the flames caught, I glanced back through the kitchen window. Terry was pacing, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. His nervous energy buzzed through the glass. "I'll grab the papers from upstairs," he called out after a moment, already heading toward the stairs. "Want to show you the offer letter?" "Sure," I replied, keeping my eyes on the fire. But as his footsteps faded upstairs, the doubt that had been simmering all day rose higher. I had asked for responsibility. What I saw instead was performance. And when Terry disappeared into the house, leaving me alone with the grill and my thoughts, I couldn't shake the suspicion that his new job was nothing more than another mask, one carefully designed to buy time, to cover tracks, to distract me from whatever he was really planning. It was the first time I admitted it to myself clearly. My son's success story was too good to be true. And soon enough, did you find out just how right I was. Terry had gone upstairs to fetch his so-called offer letter, leaving me alone by the grill. The charcoal was just beginning to glow red, flames licking at the black lumps with a steady confidence. I should have been focused on the stakes, on the celebration I'd just promised. But my mind wasn't on the food. It was on the image burned into my memory, Terry slipping something into my backpack. The back door creaked open. "Dad, how are those coals coming along?" Terry's voice was bright, cheerful, too cheerful. I forced a smile, spatula in hand. "Almost ready," I said, not looking at him. He lingered by the patio railing, casual as ever, sipping his drink like a man with nothing to hide. But I couldn't shake what I'd seen. Every second he played the role of dutiful son made my skin crawl. "Mind grabbing my work gloves from the garage?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. His smile flickered, just for an instant, then returned full force. "Sure thing, Dad. No problem at all." He slipped back inside, his footsteps fading down the hallway. That was my chance. I moved quickly, wiping my hands on the towel, stepping into the house with careful precision. Each creak of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot. The living room felt different now, darker somehow, though the lamp still cast its familiar glow. I crouched by the backpack, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might shake the walls. My fingers hesitated on the zipper. If I was wrong, if I was letting paranoia guide me, this could destroy whatever fragile trust remained between us. But if I was right, the zipper whispered open. Inside, everything was just as it should be. My gloves, my measuring tape, my spiral notebook. But deeper down, nestled against the spine of the notebook, was something foreign, wrapped in dark tissue paper. My hands shook as I lifted it out, the crinkle of paper, deafening in the silence. Slowly, carefully, I peeled it back. What I saw stole my breath. A diamond ring. Not a modest engagement piece or a family heirloom, but a massive glittering stone set in platinum, surrounded by smaller diamonds. The kind of ring worth $15,000, maybe $20,000. The kind of ring you don't just come across. It caught the light and threw rainbows across the coffee table. Beautiful, yes, but terrifying. Because I knew without a doubt this wasn't mine. It wasn't Terry's either, and the weight of it in my hand told me one thing. It was real. My stomach dropped. Why would he hide something like this in my bag? I sat heavily in the nearest chair, the ring burning hot in my palm. My thoughts scrambled, racing through every possible explanation. Had Terry stolen it? Was it part of some scam? And if so, why put it in my belongings? Then it hit me. This wasn't just about hiding the ring. This was about framing me. If the police showed up and found it in my backpack, in my house, what story would they believe? The desperate father with financial problems, or the son with a brand new job? It made perfect sense. Too perfect. And the realization chilled me to my core. From upstairs, the sound of water running in the bathroom snapped me back. Terry was humming to himself, casual, relaxed, as if he hadn't just slipped a stolen fortune into his father's bag. I looked at the ring again, its brilliance mocking me. My son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the young man I'd sacrificed tens of thousands of dollars for, was setting me up like a common criminal. My hands moved on instinct. I slipped the ring into my pocket, repacked the backpack, smoothed the tissue paper as best I could, and zipped it shut. My heart hammered as footsteps creaked at the top of the stairs. "Dad, everything okay in there?" Terry called down, his voice full of that same artificial concern. "Just heading back out," I answered, forcing calm into my tone. I set the bag exactly where it had been, wiped the sweat from my palms, and walked back toward the kitchen. The weight of the ring in my pocket felt unbearable, heavy with betrayal. Terry wanted me to play the fool, but not this time, not anymore. The ring burned in my pocket like a live coal. I could feel its weight with every step, a reminder of the trap my son had set. I forced myself back outside, spatula in hand, pretending nothing was wrong. Terry was already by the grill, poking at the steaks like a man with no worries. "Medium rare, okay?" he asked, smiling too broadly. "Whatever you think is best," I said, my voice steady though my insides were churning. I tried to focus on the familiar rhythm of grilling, the smell of charcoal, the sizzle of fat hitting flame, but my appetite was gone. Every sound around me seemed distant, muffled, like the world had shifted slightly off its axis. Then came the sound that shattered everything. Car doors, more than one, slamming in quick succession. I looked up, spatula still raised, and saw 2 squad cars parked in front of the house, lights flashing. My stomach dropped. Terry's head snapped toward the sound too, but unlike me, he didn't look surprised. His casual grin vanished, replaced by something else, anticipation. The side gate creaked open, and 3 uniformed officers stepped into our backyard. The lead was a stern-faced woman in her 40s. Her hand rested near her radio, her eyes sweeping over the scene with professional calm. "Police, nobody move." My spatula slipped from my hand, clattering against the patio stones. Zella stepped out of the kitchen at that moment, holding a salad bowl. The sight of the officers froze her mid-step. The bowl slipped from her hands, lettuce and tomatoes scattering across the red brick like confetti at a funeral. Terry moved fast. He pointed directly at me, his voice steady and loud. "Officer T." "That's him. I saw the ring in his backpack." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "What nonsense," I stammered, my throat dry, my voice cracking. "What ring?" But Terry didn't hesitate. He stepped toward the lead officer, his face painted with the perfect mask of a concerned son. "It's true. I didn't want to believe it either, but I saw it. A diamond ring, from the robbery downtown yesterday. He hid it in his bag. My knees nearly buckled. The story was already prepared, airtight. He wasn't just improvising. He had planned this moment down to the last detail. The officers spread out, one circling toward the back door, another keeping a close eye on me. Officer Brooks, the lead, spoke with calm authority. "Sir, step away from the grill." I obeyed slowly, my hands raised slightly, heart pounding like a drum. This was my backyard, my home, my family. Yet here I was, treated like a criminal because of my own son's lies. Terry moved beside the officers as if he belonged there, pointing toward the living room. "His backpack is right inside, front pocket, wrapped in tissue paper. That's where you'll find it." He knew exactly what to say. Too exactly. His certainty was damning. I glanced toward Zella, hoping for some sign of resistance, some flicker of truth, but she just stood there, tears streaming down her face, perfectly placed behind Terry, like a supporting actress in his little play. The officers moved inside. I followed, my legs heavy, my chest tight with dread. I could already picture it, the backpack on the table, the tissue paper unwrapped, the ring glinting in the lamplight, officers' eyes narrowing in judgment, handcuffs clicking around my wrists. But what Terry didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the script had already changed. The ring wasn't in that bag anymore. I had put it somewhere else, somewhere it would tell a very different story. Officer Brooks spread the contents of my backpack across the coffee table with methodical precision. Work gloves, measuring tape, my spiral notebook. A few energy bars, nothing more. She frowned slightly, then checked the side pockets. Pens, business cards, scraps of paper, still nothing. Terry leaned in closer, his voice quick and insistent. "It has to be there. I saw him put it in the front pocket. Check again." The mask of confidence he had worn so proudly began to crack around the edges. His tone pitched higher, desperation creeping in. Officer Brooks straightened, her eyes sharp on him. "Mr. Harlan, we're not finding the described item." Panic flashed across Terry's face. "No, you don't understand. I saw it, I swear." That's when I stepped forward, my voice quiet but steady. "Maybe you should check my son's dresser drawer." The words hung in the air like thunder. Terry spun toward me, his face draining of color. "What? That's ridiculous. There's no reason to—" But it was too late. Officer Brooks had already gestured to her partner. "Let's take a look." Terry's protests grew frantic as we climbed the stairs. "This is harassment. You can't just search our private space." His voice cracked, no longer polished, no longer rehearsed. I followed close behind, my heart pounding but steady. I knew exactly what they would find. The bedroom door opened. The faint smell of Zella's perfume lingered in the air, mixing with the smoke drifting from the forgotten grill outside. The room looked tidy at a glance, clothes folded, papers stacked, the bed made, but the truth lay waiting in the middle dresser drawer. Officer Martinez pulled it open without hesitation, pushing aside socks and underwear with practiced efficiency. His hand closed around something wrapped in tissue paper. The sound of crinkling filled the room. And then, there it was, the ring. Its diamond caught the light, scattering rainbows across the walls like shards of accusation. The same ring Terry had planted in my bag, the same one he had just sworn was hidden in my backpack. The silence was suffocating. "Terry Harlan," Officer Brooks said firmly, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "You're under arrest for filing a false police report and possession of stolen property." The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The sharp metallic snap was both devastating and liberating all at once. Zella's sobs filled the hallway, her carefully painted mask collapsing into genuine despair. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her shoulders shaking. "This is a mistake," Terry shouted, his voice wild now, the polish gone. "You don't understand. The ring was in his bag. I put it there myself." Even in his panic, he couldn't stop himself from confessing. The words tumbled out, sealing his fate more completely than anything I could have said. The officers led him toward the stairs, his protests echoing down the hallway. I stood in the doorway, watching my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had sacrificed for, disappear in handcuffs. And though the house still smelled of barbecue smoke and spilled salad, though neighbors were beginning to gather outside under flashing red and blue lights, all I could feel was the heavy truth pressing down on me. My son had tried to destroy me, but tonight he had destroyed himself instead. The house was quiet again, but not in the way I had known it before. not the soft, lived-in quiet of a home after dinner, or the gentle calm of a Saturday morning. This quiet was heavy, suffocating, like the silence after an explosion, when all that remains is smoke and wreckage. I sat at the kitchen table the next morning, surrounded by police documents, evidence photos, timeline sheets, witness statements. My backpack lay open on the counter, its contents still scattered from the search. Every item looked tainted, as if even my tools had absorbed the poison of Terry's betrayal. The coffee in Martha's old mug had gone cold hours earlier. I couldn't bring myself to drink from it. Somehow even that felt wrong, as if her memory too had been pulled into this mess. I read through Terry's official statement, given before his arrest. In it, he painted himself as the concerned son, horrified to discover stolen jewelry in his father's possession. His words were neat, calculated, rehearsed. Reading them was like staring at a stranger wearing my son's face. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment lie. It was a script, months of planning, of rehearsing, of weaving a story designed to destroy me. The photograph of the stolen ring sat in the evidence file. Retail value, 18 fin. Alongside it, a credit report showed Terry's gambling debts, 23,000 owed, most of it to a casino 2 towns over. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces aligned with brutal clarity. The job interview, an alibi, the celebration, a distraction, the ring, my ticket to prison while he walked free, inheriting my house, my savings, even Martha's life insurance. If his plan had worked, I would have been sitting in a jail cell while he played the grieving son, building his future on the ruins of mine. I dropped the papers onto the table, my hands trembling. For years I had told myself I was helping him, carrying him through rough waters. But the truth was sickening. I hadn't been helping. I had been feeding the very monster that now tried to devour me whole. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Cecil, my neighbor, and an old friend, a retired cop who had seen more than his share of betrayal and crime. He stepped inside, 2 coffees in hand, his expression lined with concern. "Ray," he said softly, "I saw the news. Thought you might need company." We sat together at the kitchen table. The evidence still spread between us. Cecil's eyes scanned the papers, his cop's instincts piecing the story together quickly. "This wasn't sloppy," he said after a moment. "This was play. Ned, sophisticated. Your son knew exactly what he was doing." I nodded, swallowing hard. "If I hadn't moved that ring, then you'd be wearing an orange jumpsuit right now." Cecil leaned back, sighing. "Your gut saved you, Ray. Most men wouldn't have trusted it, but you did." I stared down at the documents, the weight of it all pressing into me. "He would have inherited everything," I whispered. "The house, my savings, even Martha's insurance. And with you branded a criminal, no one would have questioned him," Cecil said grimly. "Perfect crime, except he underestimated you." The silence stretched between us, broken only by the tick of the wall clock and the faint sound of a neighbor's lawnmower in the distance. Normal sounds, from a world that no longer felt normal to me. I gathered the papers into stacks, organizing them with the same precision I used to build houses. Evidence, timeline, motive, consequences. Each pile was a reminder of how thoroughly my own son had been willing to sacrifice me. Finally, I looked at Cecil. "I need legal advice. About the house, about Zella, about protecting what's left." He nodded. "Then that's where we start. Not with what you've lost, but with what you still have." I glanced around the kitchen one more time, the table where Terry had slammed his fist, the window where I'd seen his deception, the floor where Zella's salad had shattered. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. And the bond I thought could never break between father and son had been reduced to ash. 3 weeks later, I found myself walking up the courthouse steps with Cecil at my side. The building loomed above us, all sharp lines and polished stone. But what weighed on me most wasn't the structure. It was the truth we were about to put on record. Inside, the courtroom hummed with quiet efficiency. Lawyers shuffled papers. Reporters whispered in the back rows. Families waited for their cases to be called. But for me, the air was thick with something heavier. 30 years of fatherhood coming to trial. I sat stiffly in the witness chair, uncomfortable in the same suit I had worn to Martha's funeral 5 years earlier. My palms sweated as I swore to tell the truth. "Mr. Harlan," the prosecutor began, his tone steady and deliberate, "please describe what you observed on April 17th. I swallowed hard. My eyes flicked briefly toward Terry, seated at the defendant's table in County Orange, his hands shackled. He looked smaller somehow, his posture slouched, his face pale from weeks behind bars. For just a second, I almost saw the boy I used to know, but then I remembered the ring in my backpack, the finger he had pointed at me without hesitation. "I saw my son place a stolen diamond ring in my backpack," I said clearly, my voice louder than I expected. "He intended to frame me for robbery." The words echoed in the stillness of the courtroom, carrying more weight than any hammer I had ever swung. The defense attorney tried to twist my account, suggesting I might have misunderstood, that perhaps Terry had been nervous or careless. "Isn't it possible, Mr. Harlan, that your son was only trying to hide the ring from someone else? That he had no intention of implicating you?" "No," I replied firmly. "The evidence speaks for itself." And it did. The prosecutor played security footage from Diamond Haven Jewelry Store. The grainy video showed Terry entering with a hood pulled low, but there was no mistaking his face. The timestamp matched exactly with the hours he claimed to be at a job interview. He wasn't in an office building, he was stealing a ring. The jurors shifted uncomfortably as the video played. Terry stared at the monitor, his mouth tightening, as the truth unfolded for everyone to see. For the first time, he looked cornered, not confident. When the footage ended, the prosecutor methodically laid out the rest. The gambling debts, the false police report, the desperate motive. Piece by piece, the story built itself, until there was no room left for denial. Judge Reed leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Mr. Harlan, do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Terry tried one last time. He stood, shackles clinking, his voice rising with desperation. "Dad, you don't understand. I was desperate. The gambling debts. I didn't know what else to do." His words rang hollow in the chamber, excuses scattered in the wind. "Enough," Judge Reed interrupted, his gavel striking once. "Terry Harlan, you are hereby sentenced to 5 years in state prison for armed robbery and attempted witness tampering." The sound of that gavel echoed like a coffin lid slamming shut. The bailiffs led Terry away, his chains rattling. He looked back at me one final time, his eyes pleading, as if I might intervene, as if 30 years of sacrifice might outweigh the betrayal, but I didn't move. Zella sat in the defendant section, pale and trembling. Her sentence came next. 2 years probation, community service, and a strict order to vacate my home within 30 days. She nodded through her tears, but I could see the anger beneath them. Court adjourned, and reporters crowded the hallway, shouting questions about betrayal and justice. I ignored them, walking past with Cecil at my side. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly as we stepped into the parking garage. I thought about it for a moment, the weight pressing down on me. "Like I just buried my son," I said finally. But this time, it was his choice to die. The courthouse chapter closed, but the weight of it lingered long after. My house, the one I had built my life in, no longer felt like a home. Every wall, every corner, carried echoes of betrayal. The table where Terry had slammed his fist. The window where I had seen him slip the ring into my bag. The patio where police lights had painted our family dinner in red and blue. I decided it was time to leave. Over the next 3 weeks, I packed my life into box. Us, tools, clothes, Martha's photographs, a few keepsakes that truly belonged to me. Everything else, furniture, appliances, memories tied too tightly to Terry and Zella, I left behind. The house had become a mausoleum of trust, and I refused to live among its ghosts. Zella lingered, dragging her feet as the court's 30-day deadline approached. One morning, suitcase in hand, she blocked the front door, her face pale and desperate. "Ray, please," she begged. "I have nowhere to go. Terry made me do it. I was scared." Her wedding ring caught the morning light, the same one she had twisted nervously while lying about Terry's job offer. I looked at her, at the choices she had made, and for once I felt no guilt. "You had a choice," I told her calmly, "and you chose poorly." Tears welled in her eyes. "But what am I supposed to do?" "You'll figure it out," I said, shifting the box in my arms. "People who survive betrayal usually do." The realtor arrived later that morning with the final papers. The house sold to a young couple, excited to make it their first home. I signed the documents at the kitchen table, where years of arguments had played out. My name transferring ownership not just of a building, but of a past I no longer wanted. "Keys to your Denver apartment," the realtor said. sliding an envelope across the table. Mountain view, one bedroom, exactly what you asked for. Cecil stood in the doorway, helping the movers load the last of my boxes into the truck. His handshake was firm, his eyes steady. "Promise you'll visit within 6 months," he said. "Promise you will answer when I call," I replied. We both understood that healing required distance, but not isolation. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. Terry's photographs came down from the walls, but I left the nail holes behind. Evidence that someone had once belonged there. In the garage, my pickup truck sat waiting, bed loaded with what truly mattered. When I pulled out of the driveway, Zella stood on the sidewalk with her suitcase, watching. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. Some goodbyes are better left unsaid. The interstate stretched westward, the miles carrying me farther from Omaha, from 30 years of sacrifice, from the son who had mistaken love for weakness. The Colorado mountains rose on the horizon, sharp and clean, like promises of a new beginning. For the first time since Martha's death, I felt a strange lightness. Not joy exactly, but freedom. Freedom from debts that weren't mine. Freedom from responsibilities that had been twisted into chains. Freedom from the guilt that had shackled me to a son who would rather see me in prison than face his own failures. At 58, I wasn't starting over with everything, but I was starting over with enough. Enough to build a quiet life. Enough to finally live for myself. The road hummed beneath my tires, the wind rushed through the open window, and a country song played softly on the radio. Behind me lay betrayal, heartbreak, and 30 years of misplaced loyalty. Ahead waited peace, possibility, and a life rebuilt on my own terms. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.